Hello, chefs. Welcome to Wine 101. We're at Chateau Elan Wineries in North Georgia on the foothills of the North Georgia mountains. It's fall time now. The harvest has been done. All the grapes have been pulled from the vines. They're actually in the winery. In a few minutes, we're going to take a tour of the winery itself to find out how wines are made. After which, we're going to do a tasting, find out about the characteristics of wines, from Chardonnays to Merlots, and more importantly, how to sell the wines.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
Great, glad to be here.
Welcome to Chateau Elan.
Thank you. Dan Baldwin is the head winemaker here at Chateau Elan. He's going to give us a private tour. You ready?
Yes, sir. Let's go.
Let's go.
Well, Mike, you wanted to know about grape processing, and first I thought I'd tell you about white grape processing. So for wines like Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, Riesling, etc., we just bring the grapes in after harvest. They're about 23% sugar, and we put them directly into a machine like the one behind me here. This is a tank press or a bladder press. It's basically a tank that lays on its side, stainless steel, and it has all these slits in it, and these slits make up a screen, and inside there's a bladder. We fill the tank press full of grapes, and then we inflate the bladder. That puts pressure on the grapes against the screen, and the juice comes out and is collected below here in a tank. We then move that juice, we pump it into larger tanks that are in the background back here, and we then chill it for a couple of days, separate the solids. We take the clarified juice, put it in another tank. We then add yeast and start the fermentation, which runs about 10 days at 55 degrees. For red wine processing, we do it a little differently. We bring the grapes in, and since all the color is in the skins of the grapes, we must do the fermentation on the skins. This makes it possible to remove all that color from the skins and make the wine nice and dark red. Without that process, if we just put it in the press, put the red grapes in the press like a white grape, we would get a very pink juice, and that's how they make white Zinfandel. Okay? So to get the dark red colors that we want for Cabernet, Merlot, etc., we do the fermentation on the skins, in contact with the skins, the pulp, and the seeds will provide the tannins later on that have to be aged and softened out. Now, to get the grapes ready for that process, we have to run them through another machine. We run them through a device called a crusher destemmer, and that's this machine here. Okay, the grapes go in at this end, and there's basically a big rotating cage inside of here, and here's the cage, and it rotates in one direction, and there's a screw-like device on the inside here that I'll show you from another direction, down this way. We'll open this up. And if you look inside, you'll see this shaft with all these fingers on it is basically shaped in the shape of a screw, and it rotates in the opposite direction. Now the grapes are thrown against the sides of the screens here very abruptly, and the berries go through, and the stems do not. The stems come out the end of this machine here, and the grapes go down at the far end of this shaft into a crusher, which is down at this end of the machine. You'll notice there's a big screw on the outside of this cage that pushes the grape skins forward. It goes into the crusher, which is two sets of rollers down inside this end of the machine. It breaks the skins open gently without breaking the seeds open. Seeds have a lot of tannin. That's that dry, astringent molecule that makes wines so hard to bear when they're so young. These red wines that have all these tannins are very dry and astringent. They coat the inside of your mouth. That's why we have to age red wines. It's necessary to age red wines 3 to 5 years to soften them out, depending on how much tannin is present. Could be only 1 year. Merlot is so popular these days because it has less tannin than Cabernet Sauvignon. It's ready to drink at a much more rapid age. It doesn't quite have the depth of character that the big Cabernets have, and so Cabernet is still king, but Merlot is awfully popular. Well, Mike, after we get the juice out of the grapes, in the case of white wines, we bring them over and we pump the juice into a tank. And here we see a typical tank that we use for the fermentation. We actually use it for separation and fermentation. First, we bring the juice directly into the tank where we chill it to about 32 degrees. And you can see these tanks have cooling jackets on the outside that we can run, we run Freon through the jackets, and we can chill the tank down to 30 degrees. And during that process for 1 or 2 days, a settling occurs in white juice like Chardonnay or Sauvignon Blanc, and all the pulp and the solid that gets through the screens in the press fall to the bottom of the tank, and we then pump the clarified juice into another tank, let's say this tank here. We then add our yeast, and we start the fermentation, and as I said, at 55 degrees, it'll take about 10 days to ferment. Now with red wines, as I mentioned, we have to crush the fruit, and we then pump them. We use the destemmer crusher, and then it goes into a big pump. We pump everything into the tank, okay? Now, everybody's seen I Love Lucy, and they've seen the scene where she's in the big tank and she's stomping on grapes. Basically, that's what our crusher destemmer has done. It's taken the grapes off the stems and has broken them open so that the juice is exposed to the skins, and the skins are allowed to start to break down and release their colors. And now in the old days, we'd do it like Lucy did it, and break the skins open, and they'd throw the stems and they'd pull them out, and then Lucy would get back in every day, and she'd push those skins down into the juice. Because inside the tank here, we'll see a separation. The juice will be on the bottom, and the skins will float on top. In a tank like this, it could be 8 feet of skins floating on top of the juice. So since we don't have anybody with a big foot up there pushing it down, pushing the skins into the juice, we have to use pumps. And we put a pump on the bottom of the tank here. We take juice over to the top of the tank, and we go through big 2-inch hoses, and we blast the grape skins with this juice. This helps to release the colors from the skins, and it helps to put the wine, the juice becoming wine, in contact with the skin. As the heat comes up and as the alcohol level comes up, more and more color is extracted every day. The wine gets darker and darker and darker. The first day it might be like a white Zin, kind of pinkish. By the 4th or 5th day, it's definitely dark red like a Cabernet Sauvignon or a Merlot. And it only takes 6 days to carry out the fermentation at a little higher temperature with red wines. We go at 85 degrees instead of 55 as we do with the whites. With white wines, we're trying to keep the fruity and floral aroma molecules called esters in the wine, and we ferment at a lower temperature. What yeast basically do is, yeast like sugar, and grape juice is 23% sugar. And so what the yeast do is they basically eat the sugar, they burp carbon dioxide, and that all comes out of the top of the tank, okay? And they pee alcohol. That's what yeast do. And anyway, that carbon dioxide that is coming out of the top of the tank will pull a lot of the aroma, the floral and fruity aroma molecules out with the carbon dioxide. We say that the esters are entrained in the carbon dioxide stream. So we try to reduce that carbon dioxide stream to just a crawl by lowering the temperature of the fermentation in white wines. This makes for more fruity and more floral aroma characters in the whites. With the reds, we're more concerned about getting color. The reds get a lot of flavor out of the skins and out of the tannins. We're not so worried about the fruity characters. We like to get as much as we can, but the main concern is getting nice dark red colors. That's what the consumer really wants, and we try to enhance the fruity and florals as much as we can, but you need that 85-degree temperature to get that color out of the skins. And by the 6th day, the fermentation is complete. All the sugar is gone. We say that the wine is dry, and we then separate we drain off all the wine out of the tank, off the skins. We open the big doors down here. We take the skins out. We put them in the press. We squeeze it one last time, and we get the last bit of wine out of the skins and put it back in with the wine that's been pumped into a separate tank. That's the basic process. From there, it's aging, clarification, filtering, and bottling. And that's the basic process. The aging process with really concerns red wines. It's about removing those tannins, and it's about polymerizing these little tannin molecules. They form chains over time. They do it fastest in barrels, and these little molecules form polymers. They get longer and heavier. They fall to the bottom of the barrel, or we're able to filter them out if they're big enough, and that makes the wine more soft, more supple, less tannic, less astringent, and more ready to drink for the consumers. Egg white finding is another little technique. It is also used to remove tannins, and this creates red wines that are softer and more supple and more ready to drink. And that's it in a nutshell. That's you know, it's a couple of years worth of work boiled down to 5 minutes. Well, Mike, let's cover the use of barrels a little bit. Barrels are used generally to impart character into white wines, and they're used to soften the tannins in red wines. With white wines, in particular Chardonnay, which is the most robust white wine, barrels are often used with Chardonnay to ferment the Chardonnay, and barrels have a life of about 5 years, okay, useful life. And the first 2 years, they are commonly used to impart flavor into white wines like Chardonnay. So if I have a brand new barrel and I put Chardonnay in it, and I ferment it in the barrel, in about 5 or 6 months' time, I will have so much oak flavor in that Chardonnay that that I have to get the wine out of the barrel. It'll taste like it has a 2x4 in it. Okay, so a limited amount of time provides a tremendous amount of oak character in brand new wines, brand new white wines in oak barrels. Now, if I use those same barrels 2 or 3 times in the first year and 2 or 3 times in the second year with white wines, in particular Chardonnay, I will reduce some of that oak character in the barrel, and the barrel will then be ready to be used for red wines. In red wines, we're trying to soften tannins, and when you look at a barrel, the long boards on the side of the barrels, they're called the staves, and at the ends of the staves, the morphology of the oak, the form of the oak is such that a tiny amount of air is allowed to enter in through the ends of the staves. This air contains a little bit of oxygen. Oxygen is a catalyst for the polymerization reaction of tannins. Okay, it allows the tannins to form chains, to get long and heavy, which at that point they fall to the bottom of the barrel and they can be removed either by racking, by pumping the wine out of the barrel, or by filtering the wine out of the barrel. So we get the tannins out, we make the wines less astringent, they become more soft and supple and more ready to drink, more appealing for the consumer. Barrels age wine faster than any other container. Stainless steel ages red wines a little bit. Bottles will age red wines a little bit over time, but barrels do this faster than any other container because of the tiny amount of oxygen that gets to enter in through the ends of the staves. When we use wine barrels for white wines for 2 years, and then we transfer them into the red program, the red wines can sit in the barrels for 2 to 3 years to soften out the tannins, and they don't get too much oak because the barrels are not brand new anymore. We've used them, we've gotten a lot of the flavor and put them into the Chardonnays, and we can then use them for the red wines. This is not the way it's always done. Sometimes wineries have a renewal program. They might use 10% brand new oak in a red wine, and they might use 40% 1-year-old oak and 40% 2-year-old oak, etc., to diminish the oak character in their red wine so that the oak is not overpowering. And that's about it for barrels. That's how they're used.